And spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have the Canadian Protoss player representing Team Basilisk, the Red Protoss. It is Trigger. And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Swedish Zerg player representing Team Brody. It is Fjant. And we saw how Fjant was able to upset Skillus yesterday. He did go for, I believe it was on this map. I think it was on either this map or Gressvan. No, sorry, it was Gressvan. Fjant did go for a proxy hatchery against Skillus and was able to overpower him. Skillus, not taking it too seriously, was punished for it, and Fjant was able to force the ace match as a result. Here against Trigger, we'll see what he has in store for us. Again, Trigger is also a big up-and-comer from North America. I say up-and-comer, he has been on the rise for a couple of years now, and Trigger, I would say, has solidified himself as a top 3 player in North America. Top 3 alongside Estrella and Scarlet, and the 3 of them, they do go back and forth between them as well. So he's a very powerful player. It's cool to see him in Europe. Of course, he did travel to Europe to compete in ESL Masters Summer, and because HomeStory Cup was right around the corner, he stayed in Europe. He stuck around. He lived in the basement of Roddy for a week, and he was able to go over to Germany and compete in HomeStory Cup as well. So really cool to see. Really cool to see that Trigger was given the opportunity to compete in more than just one international event. And again, he does have a lot to prove here. For the time being, we do see a hatch gas pool opener. Fjant, very standard stuff here out of our Zerg player, is forced to take the unnatural natural thanks to that probe. Likewise, Trigger back at home, going for a gate expand. Nothing too crazy. Not yet. And again, Trigger, he isn't really too much of an aggressive Protoss player, especially in this matchup specifically. He does feel very standard, very samey. We've casted Trigger quite a lot against players like Jam or players like Scarlet. And again, Trigger, he doesn't typically deviate too much from the norm. At least when it comes to the openers. But I'm ready. I'm ready here to bear witness to maybe something a little bit different, a little bit more NA. But now Stargate opener, standard stuff out of Trigger, as to be expected. I imagine we're going to be getting into an Oracle from this point as well, as Trigger does get across the map and is looking to harass that mineral line. Speaking of, he's going to get a drone already, and is looking for a second drone as well. Already a lot of damage is being done. Lost mining time. Fjant just wasn't in position here to deal with the first adept, as the adept even barely escapes. So not too bad. Not a bad start for Trigger. Meanwhile, the first Oracle is on the way. And Trigger's got options here. He could try to be aggressive with these first 2 adepts. He could try to move out and try to get even more damage done. Or he could be a lot more concerned with expanding, taking a 3rd base, and he could just be sticking back at home, making sure he doesn't really get slowed down. And there we go. He's just going to be waiting for his Oracle to rock up as he moves out with 2 adepts and that 1 Oracle. 3rd base is on the way behind this. And Fjant isn't really going to be able to punish this 3rd either. He's got a couple of Lings on the map, yes, but they are coming back home as more Lings hit the field. Oh, a couple of transferring workers do get caught out. Oh. Yeah, 2 drones will fall. Can we get one of these Spore Crawlers? We can. A Spore and 2 workers as we recall the hell out of here. It looks like Trigger was a little bit paranoid that the Lings weren't revealing themselves, so he was afraid that there was a counterattack upon him. Didn't want to get caught out. At the same time, no Spore here at the 3rd base. Fjant cutting corners is going to be punished for it. 4 drones go down. Lings attempt to go for a counterattack, but Trigger is in position with plenty of adepts, as he is working on his 3rd Oracle. And there's our transition. We have a Twilight Council and a Forge on the way, 4+1 and Blink, or we could go into Charge. Both are viable options. going to be on Fjant to attempt to keep up here. He hasn't lost too many workers. He's lost 7 so far, which is still okay, but as the queens move out of position, the oracles, they dive back in. They get another 5 drones. Five more workers go down, and yeah, Fjant, he just has been having a really hard time keeping up with the aggression here of Trigger, whether it's keeping up with the oracles or keeping up with the adepts. The main base also looking a little bit exposed, no spore there either. But Trigger is going to back off. Upon seeing all these lings move out, he does follow them for a time being, just making sure he's ready. We have a shield battery at the 3rd, we have adepts. We should have enough to hold on. As I say that, Trigger, he gets caught out. Lings are going for a surround. They're going to be able to get on top of these Stalkers. At least the Stalkers will fall. We could even get some Adepts as well. Oh. Okay, just the Stalkers for the time being. Not a bad pickup. Nicely done here by Fjant. Likewise, the Oracles were distracted. I was about to say that Trigger could maybe force a cancel on this 4th base. But it took him a while here to rock up. There's now a lot more HP on this hatchery, but can it be saved? It looks like it cannot. You see Fjant expanding here towards the north instead, and we should be seeing a cancel. Up, up, up. Do we have enough energy? It's going to be close. We barely do cancel the hatchery. Does it go down? And interesting here, so I was really curious. Fjant did go for +1 melee, he's going for +2 of course, and he did not throw down a Roach Warren. He recognizes how Stalker heavy his opponent is, and Fjant is going for a Hydra then instead. So Ling Hydra is on the horizon here for Fjant. Do love to see it. Can work very nicely here against a Stalker heavy composition. It can transition very nicely as well into Lurker play, which is going to be necessary, especially when we get into additional Archons and Charge Lots and Storm. Fjant is testing the waters. I believe the first couple of High Templar have been morphed in as well, just gathering up that energy. Oh, there we go, morphing into an Archon. Looks like we're not going to be focusing on or prioritizing Storm. Just Charge Lot Archon for the time being. As, oh god, as a mineral line gets caught out, there's nothing here that shoots up. No queens, no spores. 12 workers go down. This is becoming too much. Initially, you know, the drone damage was recoverable, I would say. But at this point, 25 workers have fallen here. And unfortunately, Fjant just not quite in position with his queens or no spore. Trigger, he's on a healthy 85 probes. He's on the worker count that the Zerg should be at this point. And Trigger is looking to snowball out of control. We have additional gateways on the way. We are lacking a Robo, so there's no War Prism. We can't reinforce on the front lines. So this push isn't as powerful as it otherwise could be. There we go. Hydras have hit the field. I was about to say whether or not we saw the Hydrogen. We did see the Hydrogen earlier in the main. Trigger was aware. Storm is in production. A bit of a bailing run by here. Does take down some Stalkers. Not too bad. Not a bad start. Well, as we do have Bailings here to protect these Hydras as well. Again, without Storms, we have a really hard time engaging. Zealot Rabbi does take down that southern base once again. The hatchery just cannot finish. Will not finish. As the Trigger is going to be backing off, warping in more High Templar. Again, without Storm, pushing into Lingbane Hydra can be a really difficult thing to do. Can be difficult. Oof. As those do get baited in. A good trade here for Fjant. His goal here to try to take down this base. It looks like he can. There's not too much left. Yeah, the side defense is under threat. The Bailings, they waddle into the mineral line. Not the most efficient trade, but we take down whatever is left. And this forces the entire army of Trigger to rotate over towards the right-hand side. This will expose the base on the left. And Fjant doing a great job at coming back. At pulling himself back into this. Trigger, in a way, getting out-positioned. In a way, it's mainly Lings. Storm is now done. High Templar have hit the field. Oof. And a big storms on these Lings, but we force them to morph into Archons. We still have more storms where that came from. At the same time, we have a Prism threatening the bases here of Fjant, but he's ready for it with his queens. It's all good. Is ready for it as we have a Zealot and Stalker run by here towards that 4th base. Lings also threaten the 5th here of Trigger. They're not going to find too much damage. Unlike this Northern Hatchery, once again it was exposed. Once again, more drones are going down. Here comes the main army. There are no lurkers ready for this. The storms, what's the answer to that? We can try to split, we can try and spread, but the storms are looking too good. Trigger, he's just rolling over this army. There is too much Protoss. GG gets called. And Trigger will take game number 1. GG. GG, well played. Really strong start here for Trigger as well. I mean, I say that, like, for the most part, I was really impressed that Fjant was able to bounce back in that game the way that he did. He was able to pull off some of those Ling run-bys and Ling counterattacks. Unfortunately, he was having a really hard time keeping up with either the Zealot run-bys or the Oracle flybys of Trigger. So many drones went down that game. If it wasn't for that, then I'm sure Fjant would have been in a much better position. If he had a better economy, faster Hive, faster Lurker Den, faster answer to those High Templar. GG, well played. And with that, we're going to be dipping into game 2. We are diving on in. And here we go. Spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Gressvan, we have the Canadian Protoss player leading the series 1-0. Representing Team Basilisk, it is Trigger. And spawning in the top left hand corner, we have as opponent, we have the Swedish Zerg player representing Team Roddy, it is Fjant. See the Andari on the chat. That's why I was asking, because I know that Roddy was there, but it would have been very fitting if he casted this series. I say very fitting. It would have been fun to see. Because in a way, they're both his boys. Where would the bias lie? Who would he cheer for? Yeah. As for now, we do have a gate expand being set up. Probe is being sent out across the map to try and scout. But we do see Fjant landing or getting his hatchery here on location. Do love to see it. It's not going to be blocked. It's not going to be denied by Trigger. So Fjant will have a much more comfortable opener here in game 2 with a hatch gas pool. Important to bear in mind that this time he did not proxy hatch. Despite what he did against Skillus, is not doing it here against Trigger. It's very possible that Trigger may have seen that match as well. It's hard to say because in this round robin group stage, all the players are constantly playing matches, so I don't know if they have time to actually watch other players, especially in the group stage. But regardless, at least Trigger is safe and sound back at home. It's also possible that Fjant believes that, again, if he just tightens things up, he could try and go toe-to-toe with Trigger in a much more standard game. That could be the read that we're getting. As for now, Fjant is just working on his link speed, pulling out of gas, as to be expected. And everything is looking pretty normal here from our Zerg player. Likewise, Trigger, he throws out his Stargate. Earlier, I was talking about how Trigger, he doesn't typically break too much from the norm, and this is another example of that. 2 games in a row, Stargate opener, standard stuff. I don't see Trigger too often go for Twilight Council openers or Robo openers. I know he's from North America, and we like to meme about that, but I feel like it's more Estrella. When it comes to the two of them, Estrella, he's more the player that's willing to experiment and willing to be a little bit more devious at times and mix things up. Break the mold, as it were. Trigger a little bit less so. At least in this matchup, I should say. He definitely had his era. He definitely had, like, we were lucky enough to cast Trigger as he was initially competing back in the day, back in 2020, when he first debuted. And for those wondering, he's actually really good friends with Nina. It was Trigger, Nina, and Starduck. They were all good friends together playing arcade games before Starduck or Trigger were ever GM. And as a result, they were influenced quite a bit. For those of you that remember Starduck, he would cannon rush quite a lot when he first hit GM. Likewise, Trigger, he was also a little bit more aggressive as a player as well, more willing to go for weird stuff like Colossus drops, for example, like very Nina influenced. But as he grew up as a player, it feels like Trigger has strayed away from that a little bit more. The Oracle has arrived. Does find a drone. Only one. It's a little bit of lava as well, but for the most part, this time at least, Fjant is able to hold on. Doesn't lose too much. Once again, he's cutting corners. Once again, no spores. But there we go. We have a spore here at the natural base. As 2 Oracles do hit the field and up. Oh. They try to get some of these drones, but the positioning here from Fjant, the punish is real, and Oracle does go down. Very nicely done. A much better start for Fjant, is what I should say. Considering what happened in game 1, like, game 1 was brutal. Like, you did not want to be a drone under the command of Fjant in game 1. Aye. As the Trigger did go for a triple Oracle opener, and again, he's having a really hard time finding damage. So far, only 3 drones have gone down. For 1 Oracle, not worth it at all for Trigger. As he's backing up and he's transitioning into +1 and Blink. So a much more secure start for Fjant. He's able to get 3 bases up and running. We've got a 4th on the way as well. And yeah, with this, Fjant even actually going for a much faster Roach Warren. Interesting, the Roach Warren is hidden here in the main base as well. I'm curious if he plans to go for 3-way saturation. I'm talking like 66 to 70 drones. And just make nothing but Roach Ravager. Or Ling Roach Ravager. We'll see. As before that happens, Trigger has arrived. He has arrived with his Stalkers. Blink not quite done. Oh! But a big stasis trap on those Lings. A lot of Lings are being shaved, but the Queens are arguably overextending as well. Trigger is able to get quite a bit of value here as he barely doesn't get another Queen. Stasis does run out, and again, we still don't have Blink, by the way. Uh-oh. Oh, there as it barely does finish up in the middle of that fight, but the Link surround is just too good. So many Stalkers are going down. Trigger being punished so hard for his aggression. And losing all these Stalkers, this is actually a pretty big deal. many Stalkers went down? 10 Stalkers. Like, the danger, the purpose here of going for a Blink Stalker opener is that your Stalkers, they build up over time. They gain value over time. That's something that just isn't happening. Meanwhile, at the same time, there is no shield battery at the third base. This third looking very exposed. Fjant doesn't go for it. Oh. So he's going to be losing a lot of queens across the map. Roaches are coming out just in time. It looks like the hatchery may go down. The transfuse up. Transfuse will not be enough. The hatchery falls, but once again, a lot of Stalkers go down. At the same time, the Lings, they come back in. 17 probes fall. Fjant even going for the Nexus, a little bit greedy. But he gets the mineral line, and that is what matters. Again, there just was no shield battery. Trigger himself just being a little bit greedy, not respecting Fjant as much as he should have. Likewise, no shield battery here at the fourth base either. Uh-oh. Speaking of, this thing run by, it can do a lot more damage. At the same time, Oracles are finally finding some worker kills. 7 drones go down. Stalkers are going to be applying pressure here and taking down another hatchery. But at the same time, we have that massive counterattack being set up. Banelings are waddling in. They take down the Warping and Zealots. The cannon falls. The Oracles are going to do what they can, but probes will fall as well. Oh no! Oof. This hit just before +2, so some of the probes barely do survive. Fjant is making Trigger work for it. Surprisingly, Trigger actually has a higher worker count than Fjant. Earlier, I was talking about how I was curious if Fjant was going to go for a 3-base all-in, just staying on a low worker count, and that's kind of what's happening. Just hyper-aggression here out of our Zerg player. There's more kills on the cannons. The army being brought over. I worry here. I worry that Fjant is maybe being a little bit too wasteful again. He just doesn't have the best economy to sustain this army. Still trying to squeeze out a couple more drones. Trigger now moving out. This time, once again, no shield battery here at the third, but he's got a cannon. Cannon here at that southern base as well. God, and Fjant, he's just not stopping with his counterattacks. God, and Trigger has so many oracles. Fjant, he's got options here. Does he try to surround and collapse on the army, or does he go for a big counterattack? He's going for the counterattack. Roaches towards the south. Lingbane here towards the north. +2 is done. Baneling speed as well. Another mineral line goes down. And there just aren't enough Stalkers. The surround is upon us. Trigger forced to blink away, but we have so many links to collapse on this army. GG gets called, and Fjant fights back in the series. He takes game number 2. GG. Oh my god. I was really concerned seeing Fjant just lose bases, lose workers as well, and not replace them, but those Lingbane counterattacks, they did so much here for Fjant. Trigger just never quite prepared for them. I was late to react, never really had anything in position at home to defend. I'm sure a lot of this also kind of came down to the fact that Trigger lost 10 Stalkers at the start of the game. Like, things were very quickly snowballing in favor of Fjant early on. And Trigger, he never really had too much momentum or of a map presence of his own. Despite attempting to be active on the map, that never really stopped Fjant from just going for these massive counterattacks. GG. GG, well played. We have a series. And I'm pretty happy about this, right? Like, we've been casting Fjant over the past couple of days, and the games that he has been able to win, it's typically been cheese. It's typically just been cheese, just all-ins, or some hyper-aggressive play. And sure, we saw aggression out of Fjant here in game 2 against Trigger. But this was a little bit more straight up. It did feel that way anyway, compared to what we saw against Skillous, for example. So, yeah, impressive. Very impressive stuff here out of Fjant. GG. GG, well played. And here we go. We're getting into the ace match, into game number 3. And, oh. Spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have the Canadian Protoss player. We're just making sure everyone's aware of the score. I'm not too familiar with Super KRM, but regardless. In the top right-hand corner, representing Team Basilisk, it is Trigger. And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Swedish Zerg player representing Team Roddy. It is Fjant. Boy, here we go. Again, Fjant fighting back, fighting hard in this series, forcing the ace match. It all comes down to this. Again, coming into this series, I still do favor Trigger quite a bit. Do, of course, consider him to be the favored player. But Fjant doing well here, making him work for it. And how will this series conclude? So, fun fact, yesterday Fjant actually showed up in the chat. He showed up in the chat and we were talking, I was saying how like we were casting his games and we were going to cast more of him. And he was a little bit embarrassed, definitely a little embarrassed. But so far, like, it's been, again, I've been impressed. Been great to see him. Great to see more of Fjant. Wholesome, Bobby, wholesome. As we are loading into a pretty large map, I'm a little bit surprised this made it through the veto process, especially considering this is a best of 3, not a best of 5. So, yeah, to come out on altitude is pretty interesting. The reason why I say that, of course, it's a very large map. There's a lot of bases to be taken. I feel like players in general don't want to go into the late game. They don't want to go into a longer game. I think I'm referring more to Fjant when I say that. I don't know if he wants to face off against a late game Protoss player. I do think that Trigger has the potential to go into that as well. I'm not saying he's going to rush into double Stargate carrier production. By no means am I implying that from Trigger. But he is willing to transition into that if he sees the opportunity once he gets his 4 bases up and running. I know we've been seeing some hyper aggressive Blinkstalker styles out of Trigger and gateway styles out of Trigger, but on a map like altitude, it's so tempting to go Sky Toss. How could you not? So yeah, interesting. We'll see if Fjant has something special in store for us here on a large map like this, or if he does go for a more straight up play, more macro oriented outlook on this game. For the time being, Hatch gas full, Fjant able to take his natural. Third base is on the way. Likewise, back at home, we have a Stargate opener into an Oracle. So everything is looking normal here from both players. Everything is looking as it should. And what I appreciate as well is that it's very possible that Fjant was maybe a little bit nervous in Game 1, because in Game 2 he had a much stronger Oracle defense. He had a much better time, a much easier time just holding onto his bases, defending against the Oracles, against the Adepts, making sure things didn't snowball out of control too early. So maybe he just needed some time to warm up. As the Adepts are going to be threatening these bases. As they camp the production here, they're going to be able to get a drone for their troubles. We have a second Oracle coming out. As the Adepts are harassing the Lings, they ignore them. They go for a massive counterattack instead. This is the danger of being aggressive with your initial Adepts, is that you don't have them at home to protect your third. As I say that, Stalkers are warped in just in time to deal with these Lings. Now, Stalkers likewise also aren't the best unit against Lings, so these Stalkers are going to go down. Likewise, looks like a queen did fall across the map. Both stalkers will get picked off. And this is getting a bit out of hand. Yeah, we do force at least one Oracle back home. Activate the Pulsar Beam. And Trigger will hold on to his third base. Not without some losses, though. Okay, the units lost type here. 2 Stalkers and a Pylon. And Fjant isn't done. 2 Oracles are still across the map, but one of them at home did use up a lot of energy. And Fjant is coming back in. He is diving back in. He's looking for a surround on these Stalkers, and he's going to get it. We have the Pulsar Beam, but we run out of energy. Oh. Thankfully, 2 more do appear. 2 more Oracles do return back home. Fjant really wants that Stalker. He's going to get it. Very cute moves here out of Fjant. Back at home, he's just going to be saturating his 3 bases. He's working towards his Roach Warren. 4th is on the way as well. You can see Fjant just having a lot more freedom this game so far. But that could all change here, especially with these Oracles moving out. They don't have that much energy. They had to spend a lot of it across the map defending against those Lings. But they can still find drone damage, and they will find it. 4, 5. Oof! 5 drones, but an Oracle goes down. And the wall is not a wall. The Lings, they do get into the natural. They focus out the pylon. The Warpin is going to finish. Oh, it barely will. But Trigger is supply blocked. And again, not the best trades across the map for Trigger either. Getting 5 drones is good, but not for an Oracle. The Stalker move out is going to be spotted. Fjant is aware. Fjant should be getting ready as... Oh! Does kill one of his own drones. Pretty sure that was an accident. Fjant is also supply blocked. Uh-oh. He's actually pretty heavily supply blocked. He cannot... He has a Roach one. He has Roach speed on the way, but he has no Roaches. Uh-oh. 3 Overlords are in production before they do rock up. How much damage is going to be done? Another Overlord is going down. We do see a massive Ling counterattack here. Going to be taking down these Shield Riders. Going to be doing a lot of damage. But these Stalkers are getting out of hand. The Queens are trying to do what they can here, but alas, they are forced back. 32 more Lings in production. The Lings across the map get cleaned up. They don't get any probes. It's honestly looking really close. We have another massive warp into these Stalkers. The blinks from Trigger are looking good. Is losing a couple of Stalkers here and there. The Trigger, he keeps up the momentum. Has to be careful not to overextend though, as the Lings are getting quite a bit of a surround here. Yo, is Fjant holding? Oh, he's barely not. Barely Queens are getting picked off. Again, still no Roaches. Finally, they're on the way. Fjant with a large gas bank, mineral bank as well. Just wasn't able to use it. The 4th base goes down. Good Ling counterattack. It does force Trigger to pull back to defend this proxy location. As a Trigger is, for the most part, setting up for a 3, or was set up for a 3 base all in. As Trigger backs off though, Fjanti's going to be able to shut down these pylons, at least one of them. He's double expanding, trying to get a 4th back up and running. Roaches have finally hit the field, but at this point it may be too late. Once again, more Overlords go down. Once again, another supply block. Oof. These Ling counterattacks just haven't been finding as much value as before, as previously in this series. Trigger is doing a great job at containing his opponent to 3 bases. I mean, again, Fjant is double expanding, but Trigger, as soon as he sees it, as soon as he spots it, he can punish that. Lings move out, but they do get caught in the center of the map. Trigger just pushing through a charge. Not quite done yet, but it's on the way. And once it kicks in, Trigger can collapse on this army. Not even on the army, on the bases. Yes, Fjant just doesn't have enough to defend. Hatchery on the left-hand side is going to go down. A good surround of those zealots. But we have more zealots where that came from. The Rombais, they don't stop. Fjant is going for another counterattack. This hatchery is going to get cancelled once again for what is that, the 3rd time? No, and the drones, they reveal the hidden 4th base of Fjant. Trigger now has eyes on this. He takes down the mineral line. He's going to look to take down the base itself. And yeah, the supply looks just far too many earlier. Sling Rumbai is doing a great job at keeping Trigger busy, I guess. Stalkers are pulled back. Fjant, he's buying time. What's he doing with said time? He's working on +1 range. We have Bailing Speed on the way, which can help. Fjant does hold on to his 4th. It's just the drone count. Like, he's down to 46 workers. He just doesn't have an amazing economy. He has a bank, sure, and because of that bank, he can make a wave of Bailings. He can build up an army, but he can't replace it. There it is. There's his bank. 25 Bailings are on the way. Trigger finally expanding, finally taking his own 4th. And with the addition of these Archons, Lingbane isn't as effective as it once was. Not anymore. Even losing the hatchery supply. The supply blocks. They've been so real. But even losing that base supply blocks Fjant. As the Archons, they tank the Bailings. Trigger is pushing up this ramp into Miles. It's going to be difficult. Meanwhile, we have a massive Lingbane counterattack, but we recall back home. The Bailings, they don't get into the mineral line. Oh, and these are a lot of roaches to be throwing away. Yeah, we can see Trigger just cutting off the roaches in the center of the map. I mean, the counterattack did buy time for Fjant. It did force the army back home, but it was just a really costly move. The Roaches, Ravagers, they do get cleaned up. We have another Link counterattack, and we could maybe kill this Nexus, but not too sure if that's the most impactful of moves. And we're gonna get it, to be fair. Up. We do get the base. We do get the Nexus. But Trigger's not slowing down. He's not stopping. And this may be the last offense for Fjant. At this point, he doesn't have anything to counterattack across the map. Loses another hatchery. Trigger actually turns back around. There we go. I don't think he needs to. He's just playing it out safe. He's just rotating, just constantly denying the 4th. Over and over and over again, just denying the 4th base, never committing fully into the 3rd. Trigger, he just doesn't want to throw this away. And as he rotates over, he's going to catch these drones. Oh, God. Once again, Trigger, he doesn't have to go up into the 3rd base. He can just focus on denying these fringe bases instead. Another link counterattack is going to deny the fourth. So it's good to see that Fjant is at least containing Trigger as well to 3 bases, but as a Protoss player, he's content with that. More so than the Zerg. As Trigger has been trading more efficiently. Has been able to build up his army over time. Fjant getting ready for a surround. Bold move. But Zealots, they do slip into the natural. We blink on forward into the third. We finally commit to a fight. We have enough Immortals, enough Archons. And it is going to be too much. The boys are being pulled. It was a close game, to be honest. And if we wind it back 8 minutes or so, there was a moment there where Fjant had a lot of momentum, but GG gets called, and Trigger will take the series 2-1. GG. Well played. Again, like at the start of that game, it felt like the initial half of that game, Fjant was looking good, definitely, but there were a lot of supply blocks. There were a lot of moments where he just couldn't really produce, he couldn't spend his resources, he couldn't spend his money, and that allowed Trigger to just keep things as close as they were. And that explains what Fjant said yesterday, or I think it was 2 days ago. In the chat, Fjant, he was like, don't watch my series versus Trigger. Now I was a little bit perplexed because again, he didn't play too badly, but a couple of mistakes here and there did potentially cost him the series, and this would have been a big win. This would have been a big win for Fjant. GG, well played. So close, so close. But congratulations to Trigger. Again, he was the favorite player coming into it. He is definitely one of the best that North America has to offer, and yeah, strong showing here from Trigger nonetheless, as he does take the series and does position himself a little bit better in this group overall. Fjant having a bit of a harder time now. This isn't the last we're going to be seeing of these two players. We'll be casting them later on in the evening. Before that, though, we have another series for us. We have another PvZ between two of the best players in this group. Looking forward to it. It is going to be Solar versus Skillous. Oh,